If you like the idea of owning property, having monthly payments flowing from the real estate, without actually being a landlord, REITs are one of the cleanest ways to do it. It stands for Real Estate Investment Trust, and it's basically a company that owns and often operates income-producing real estate and pays out most of its profits to shareholders as dividends. It's one of the best ways to get real estate or property income because a good REIT can give you three things at once. Real assets, you own a share in the property portfolio, recurring cash flow, and diversification, in a format you can actually buy and manage like any investment. However, many people scoop up any old REIT and end up with a completely dysfunctional portfolio. The issue isn't that REITs as an asset don't work, it's that most people don't have the fundamental knowledge for picking them. So in this video I'm going to show you the exact way to think about buying REITs properly. You can learn to spot the strong ones, avoid the traps, and build your own REIT income portfolio to become the pseudo-landlord you always wanted to be. Let's get started, but first, hello and welcome back to the Dividend Experiment, the channel that helps you build a portfolio that pays your bills. The content that we discuss is intended for information and educational purposes only, and should not be considered investment advice or investment recommendations. Whenever you invest, your capital is at risk. A while back now, I was reading a post or article by someone who was talking about this REIT they had bought. It had a 14.2% yield. Now on the one hand, that's a pretty compelling starter yield. For every £1,000 they invested, £142 was coming each year as a dividend. But as we know, the times when the yield creeps up is also the time when you need to do extra due diligence, as it could be a sign the market is trying to tell you something about this stock. And only looking at the yield, or chasing yield, is just one of the three traps potential REIT investors fall for. The other two are assuming a single REIT is diversified, thinking it owns lots of properties so I'm safe, while missing hidden concentration. That could be one or highly concentrated tenant, sector, region, or financing conditions. And then the third is treating the dividend like it's guaranteed. This is where the investor forgets that dividends come from cash flow, and over time cash flow can change, so payouts can be reduced or cut. In this video, I'll cover all three in detail so you know what to watch out for. So to start off with, chasing yield. Let's get back to that investor with the 14.2% yielding REIT. A while back, I was reading a post by someone who'd bought Global Net Lease, ticker symbol GNL. Despite the yield, they weren't presenting it as some wild speculation, quite the opposite. They were framing it like a smart income move. Net lease real estate, steady rent, and a big dividend. Interested, of course, I did what I always do in these situations. I pulled up the data. At the time, the dividend was 35.4 cents per share per quarter. And because the share price had come down, the yield being quoted was around 14.2%. That feels like a strong starting point, especially compared to most income investments. But this is where people get caught out. This is like the financial equivalent of one of those flowers that tricks the bugs to come closer, thinking it's full of delicious nectar, but in actual fact they fall into the pit of the plant and get digested in acidic juices or whatever. Because that kind of yield doesn't usually appear out of nowhere. Yield percentage and price have an inverse relationship, i.e. when one goes up, the other goes down and vice versa. This is because the stock pays out a flat number as a dividend, and the yield is simply calculated from that flat payment figure as a percentage of the price. In the case of Global Net Lease, it was that the price had been falling, and the yield is rising because of that. So when I looked at the chart, the first thing I noticed was this. It hadn't been a stable income REIT chart. It had been trending down for a while. And that's the key point I want to land here. When a yield is unusually high, you don't automatically treat it as a reward, you treat it as a question. There's no free lunch after all. That's not to say that all high yield stocks are bad necessarily. Yield is important for income investors after all. It's that you should not only look at the yield. That is to say, you shouldn't find a stock with a high yield and then throw away any other analysis on that company. You need to be asking, why is the market pricing this so cheaply that the yield looks like this? Now the investor who wrote the post was focused on the dividend, but the chart was telling a second story at the same time. And then you get to the moment where the risk becomes obvious, but by then, of course, it's too late. In early 2024, Global Net Lease changed its dividend policy and reset the payout. The quarterly dividend was reduced from around 35 cents per share to 27 cents per share. And that's a cut of about 8 cents per quarter, about 22%. Now, if you're specifically holding it for income, that's not a small change. The investor didn't just experience a lower dividend, they were also sitting on a position where the price had already fallen significantly. So it's not just that the income was lower, it's that the income was lower and the capital value had been hit. And this is exactly why only looking at the yield is such a dangerous trap. Because if the yield is the only reason you buy, you tend to ignore the part that matters most, the strength of the company itself. So that's the first trap, only looking at the yield. Next, I'm going to show you the second trap, the one that catches people even when they think they're being sensible. Assuming a REIT is diversified just because it owns a lot of properties. A REIT that a lot of investors were raving about for a while was Unity Group, ticker symbol UNIT or UNIT. The pitch sounded great. Communications infrastructure, long-term contracts, real assets, and the kind of income profile that looked great for a REIT portfolio. And this is why it's such a good example of this trap. On the surface, it looked diversified. It wasn't one building or one city even, or even one tenant type that you immediately recognize. It was infrastructure spread across a network. So people assume that even if something goes wrong somewhere, it was spread out enough to be fine. Normally that's the level of diversification that most people stop at. But when you looked underneath the headline story, there was a single detail that mattered more than anything else. A huge chunk of the revenue was tied to one tenant relationship. Fitch noted the Windstream master lease was about 63% of Unity's expected 2019 revenue. So despite the diversified infrastructure narrative, the cash flow was very concentrated. And this is the real lesson. Diversification isn't necessarily the number of assets a REIT owns. That can help for sure, but it's not as a strong reason as many might think. Diversification is actually whether one relationship can materially change your outcome. Now watch what happens to the price when that pressure point gets hit. When Windstream related problems escalated, Unit didn't drift down slowly, it repriced hard. There was a day where Unit fell about 37% in a single session on Windstream related developments. That's the market realizing that it wasn't a widely spread rental income stream. It's far too concentrated and fewer investors wanted to take on that risk. After that comes the consequence income investors actually feel right in the wallet, the dividend. Unity had been paying around 60 cents per share per quarter, declared for payment in January 2019, but soon after it declared a dividend of 5 cents per quarter. As a result, the income REIT that so many people are excited about goes from 60 cents a quarter to 5 cents. And that's why this second trap matters. A REIT can look diversified because it owns a lot. But if the cash flow depends heavily on one tenant, one sector, one region, or one financing condition, it's not diversified. So the rule is don't count the properties, count the income sources. Because when the income is concentrated, your outcome is concentrated. If the source of the income is all coming from one deal or one client or tenant, or even one geographic location, it matters much less how many properties the REIT holds in total. A good way to think about REIT diversification is, how many independent rent checks am I actually relying on? The quickest check is the rent roll and tenant concentration. Look at the top tenant percentage, top 5 or top 10 tenants percentage, and whether any single tenant or tenant group could materially change the REIT's cash flow if it weakened. A REIT can own hundreds of properties and still be effectively concentrated if one tenant, one operator, or one contract drives a large share of that revenue. When you're reviewing a REIT, you'll usually find these numbers in the investor presentation, supplemental package, or the 10K, often labelled as the top tenants and percentage of annualised base rent. Diversification also includes what those tenants do and where the properties are. It can look like there are many tenants, but can still be exposed to the same cycle if they're all in one industry. For example, a bunch of different retailers is still one consumer spending bet. Same with geography. A REIT can have many buildings, but if a big chunk of the rent is concentrated in one state, city, or regulatory environment, you've still got a single region risk. So you want to see rent spread across multiple industries and multiple regions, so a shock to one sector or location doesn't become a portfolio level problem. Finally, diversification isn't only properties and tenants, it's also balance sheet and funding risk. Two REITs with the same property count can behave totally differently if one is dependent on constant refinancing, has a large amount of debt maturing soon, or relies heavily on capital markets staying friendly. In other words, a REIT can be diversified operationally but still be concentrated financially. And that brings us straight to the third trap. Because once a REIT becomes financially tight, the dividend stops being something you can treat as automatic. Even if the buildings are full and the tenant list looks healthy, a refinance window closing or a debt wall coming due or high interest costs can change the cash flow maths quickly. And that's the third mistake, treating the dividend like it's guaranteed. A REIT dividend is a distribution of cash flow, not a promise. If cash flow gets squeezed by vacancies, rent pressure, or the balance sheet, management can reduce it, pause it, or even reset it. Let's take a look at what that looks like in real life. A REIT that a lot of income investors liked for years was EPR Properties, ticker symbol EPR. Had a simple appeal, it paid monthly, and it owned experiential real estate, places people go for entertainment and leisure. If you look at before 2020, it looks like the kind of REIT people assume will just keep paying. And to be fair, it had been paying regular monthly dividends. For example, you can see monthly dividend amounts like 37 cents early in 2020, and then 38 cents by spring 2020. Now here's where the lesson becomes obvious in real life. When the conditions changed in 2020, the share price didn't just wobble, it dropped hard, because the market was quickly repricing the cash flow risk. And then came the part that matters for income investors. The dividend policy changed. EPR's reporting later described it clearly. The monthly cash dividend to common shareholders was suspended following the common share dividend paid on May 15, 2020. A REIT dividend is a distribution decision. When cash flow becomes uncertain, management's first job is to protect liquidity and keep the business stable. And one of the fastest first ways to act on this is simply freeze, pause, or cut the dividend. That obviously doesn't mean REITs are bad income plays. It means you should never buy a REIT assuming that the dividend is automatic. The correct question is, what has to stay true for this dividend to continue? And that's why when you analyse a REIT properly, you look beyond the dividend rate into the cash flow, tenant resilience, and the balance sheet that supports it. So here's the point. If you want REITs to work for you, you can't buy them off the dividend number and hope. You need to be able to answer 3 questions before you put money in. Where is the cash flow coming from? How exposed is it to one thing going wrong? And how likely is the dividend to hold up? And that's where most people get stuck, because REIT analysis is its own skill. And if you want the full process, much more than I could go on for in this single video, well, that's exactly what the 12 structured lessons in the REIT module on the Dividend Academy is. You start right at the foundations, what a REIT actually is, how it works, and who invests in REITs and why. And then we move into the practical distinctions that matter, the different types of REITs, how REIT investing works around the world, and why 2 REITs can behave completely differently even if they both own property. Then you get into the decision-making pieces, the key REIT metrics to look for, the numbers that actually tell you what's going on, what a strong REIT balance sheet looks like, and the qualitative factors that don't show up in a headline yield. Things we've spoken about already in this video, like tenant quality, lease structure, and the risks that sit underneath the income. And importantly, it turns all of that into a repeatable checklist you can use every single time you look at a REIT. So you're not guessing and you're not relying on vague impressions. For example, when you get to the balance sheet, you're not left thinking, is this leverage high? You'll have a simple scorecard to check against, like the one-page strong balance sheet guide you get within the module. And finally, the module turns into a portfolio approach, how to build diversified REIT portfolio properly, when REIT funds make more sense than picking individual names, and a full module on 10 warnings to watch out for so you can spot the common failure patterns early. If you want to be able to analyse these properly and actually build confidence in what you own, the REIT module on the Dividend Academy is the natural next step. And just to recap what you've learned in this video, because this is the part that keeps you out of trouble, there are 3 traps most REIT investors fall into. The first is only looking at the yield, seeing a big number and buying before you understand why it's high and whether it can actually last. The second is assuming that one REIT is diversified because it owns lots of properties, when the income can still be concentrated in one tenant, one sector, one region, or even one financing condition. And the third is treating the dividend like it's guaranteed, forgetting that dividends come from cash flow, and cash flow can change, which means the dividend can change too. So the correct order is simple. Start with the income engine, what drives the rent and how durable it is. Then check concentration and risk, what could break it. And only then look at the yield and decide if you're being paid appropriately for the risks you're taking. If you follow that order consistently, REITs can be a powerful way to build long-term income without getting caught out by the common traps. Hey, thank you for watching. If you made it this far, YouTube thinks that you'll like this one next. And if you want my free Dividend Commandments PDF, it's the checklist I use to spot red flags before I buy stocks. Link is here and in the description.